Before we get started on Dharma talk, please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Dear Venerable Teacher, dear Sangha, good afternoon. So we are on the 8th of the 10 fetters, so we are almost there. I was going to do 8 and 9, but, I have that backwards. Sorry, 8 is conceit. But you get the idea. So today we're covering conceit, which is mana in Pali. So the literal word of mana in Pali literally means measure. But generally speaking, it can mean conceit or self-pride or arrogance. And in the higher teachings in Buddhism, the Abhidharma, conceit is actually one of the 14 unwholesome factors that are associated with the 3 poisons of ignorance, greed, and anger. But as a fetter, conceit is the very subtle conceit called asmi mana, in which it carries out the feeling of I am or I exist, right? So the subtle ego conceit of I am, which is eliminated only when we attain arahatship, a final enlightenment, the 4th level of enlightenment, is different than the first fetter of self-identity self-identity or identity view, right? Because identity view is associated with the 5 aggregates or the 5 skandhas, right? And the attachment to the 5 skandhas or the 5 aggregates. Whereas conceit is in the more egotistical self-view. So if we use the literal meaning of measure, it is measuring our superiority or inferiority complex against others, right? So saying, I'm a successful doctor, or I'm a famous architect, or I'm a well-known engineer, right? All these are mana. This is conceit. You're being conceited. But it also works on the other hand, right? When you're being inferior, when you're measuring yourself against others, right? I am worse than this person, or in comparison to XYZ, right? That's also mana, it's also measuring. So the first form of measuring is the superiority complex. The second method, or the second form, is the inferiority. But even to measure and conclude that I am equal, right? I am as good as this person or that person is also measuring. Right? Of course, we're all different, and we have our differences, and we're not all the same, which is totally fine. But we should recognize that we're different. We should recognize that we are different, but not draw from that a conclusion that we are either better or worse, higher or lower. Right? Just acknowledge that there are differences, but to go around comparing, to go around and comparing yourself or comparing yourself to others is not helpful. It's not going to be skillful or beneficial to you. But even in the spiritual world, we have conceit. We can be conceited. If I ever hear any of my students do this, and they're going to be admonished. But even in the spiritual realm of things, right? People may go around and ask you, how long do you meditate per day or for a day, right? You meditate for 10, 20, 15 minutes. I meditate for an hour. I meditate for 2 hours. You only hold 5 precepts? I hold 10 precepts, 8 precepts. I hold the 48 vows of the Bodhisattva. This is also conceited, right? So, but that's a question I get a lot, right? People ask me, how long do you meditate per day? I'm like, I always give a range. Between 30 minutes and 3 hours. Right? It doesn't matter how long you meditate. Why does that matter to you? Right? So if someone's asking you how long you meditate for, out of curiosity or just a general sense, then that's totally fine. But if they're using it as a form of measure or comparing who's better, then that's not the idea, right? So the 8th fetter is the most fundamental way in which we identify with experience, or better yet, identify as experience. So we may suppose that because of the 6th and 7th fetter that is eliminated, right, which is basically mind and body, right, we may think that they fall away, and so there shouldn't be any sense of I or me. But that notion of I am or I exist is so fundamental and it's so persistent that it doesn't need to be connected to or proven by a mind or body, right, or anything else. And then the Buddha said that with the first 7 fetters out of the way, the sense that I exist is by this point no longer tangible. There's nothing we can point to and say, I am that. However, the belief that there is nevertheless a me or I is so strong that it doesn't need any tangible proof. So in looking back to the first fetter, the sense of a separate entity called a self was likely quite tangible. Therefore, was something that we could look for. So in the first fetter, the self-identity view, this is the view of through the 5 aggregates, right, or through the senses. This is where we connect the things that we hear and see and smell and taste and touch, right? We use these senses to describe things that you like or dislike or you're neutral about or whatnot, right? But here, however, we're looking at the subtlest self-view of all, where it can feel like there's a filter or a screen of some sort by which we selectively browse experience and pick out that which is or isn't me. It's that filter or screen that is searched for as part of a direct inquiry approach. So the Buddha this is where the self-reflection or the self-contemplation meditation comes in meditation, right? This is where the Buddha says you need to go and self-reflect to find this ego I and attempt to eliminate it. So since it's no longer tangible, the sense of a me is more of a itch that we can't scratch. So even though there is not a tangible sense of a me, there is still a tangible sense of an interiority, right, which is the subtlest boundary of all, which is experienced and dwelt within, which seems to prove that I exist. However, this apparent interiority is an illusion. So if we think of this interiority is the voice we hear in our head that speaks to us, right? It's the voice that says, that basically talks to you, tells you what you like and what you don't like, what to think, what to do, how to act, etc., right? It's a little voice in our head saying, do this or do that, don't do this and don't do that. That's the mana of conceit that we're talking about. The Buddha asks us to look within, find where it's coming from, find why it's there, right? And to attempt to recognize that this me that's in your mind is not really you. It's a fabrication of our senses and our body and whatnot. So when this feather breaks, the 8th fetter, again, I have them backwards, it's conceit before restlessness. So when this fetter breaks, all boundaries will forever disappear, right? Particularly the separation of inner and outer, right? Inner and outer is between me and you, which is separation was a key aspect of concluding that there is a me in the first place. So at that point, rather than the sense of me experiencing what is happening, there's simply experiencing, right? So rather than I am everything, it's simply everything, right? And there's no me connected to the experience. You are not experiencing, you are the experience, right? So there's no me doing this or I'm doing that or you're doing this or doing that. It's just doing, right? And so this inner and outer aspect that the Buddha tells us to attempt to separate it's the me and you, right? If there's a me, there has to be a you. If there's a you, there has to be a me, right? So it's this aspect of the conceitedness of mana that we have to locate, essentially, and to figure out how to see its illusion. Then the Buddha goes on to say that without having to try to maintain or advocate for a me any longer, there can be a profound peace associated with this shift. So rather than feeling interconnected with all beings, we simply no longer feel disconnect or a barrier or resistant toward them. And we're able to move much more effortlessly through life. So without a me in the way any longer, kind and compassionate acts have even less of an impediment, meaning that we can more easily respond to the needs of others. Some may also attempt to say that because there's this separation, that there's no longer a sense of me, that suffering also doesn't exist altogether, that suffering stops, right? Since there isn't a me to suffer. But suffering does indeed continue. Because, albeit in a more fundamental way, right? So this reveals that there doesn't have to be, and never actually had been, a me by which suffering arises in the first place. Moral of the story is to watch out for that superiority, inferiority, or neutral aspect of things. There is no I am better than you, you're better than me. There's no equality either. Let me take that back. There's no reason to compare, right? Whether you are better or worse or equal, there's no reason to compare. Why do we have to compare? What is the reason to compare? The only reason we compare is to either make ourselves feel better or make ourselves feel worse, for the most part, right? And this is also this is very much a societal thing too, right? We are in a society, in a world that is controlled and manipulated by the things that are fed to us, right? Media and the news and products and services, all these things that get bombarded into our life, saying that you need this, buy this product and you'll be happy. Use this service and your life will be easier, right? And so we're constantly being fed these illusions in life in an attempt to mask any difficulties or sufferings we may have. This is also a point where expectations also need to be released. Expectations are also a form of comparing. It's also a form of measuring, right? Because when you have expectations of something or someone, how someone should act, how things should be, what people should or should not say, we have these expectations of others. And so when those expectations either met or not met, if they're meeting our expectations, then they're measuring up to what we want to happen, right? But if they don't meet our expectations, then they're not measuring. The measuring goes down versus up. So think of everything that we do in life. How often do we actually measure, right? How often are we comparing? How often are we allowing our expectations to take over? And as soon as you're able to recognize that either you're measuring, comparing, or expecting, then you can have a thought, you have a moment of clarity, or can have a moment of clarity, if you don't allow that comparison or measuring to take over. This is what the conceit is actually one of the most difficult fetters to break, according to the Buddha. Because it is something so fundamental, so inherent in our mind that it's something that's always been with us, right? How often do we say, this body isn't me? How often do we say, this mind isn't me? How often do you say, the clothes that I wear, the things that I do, the places that I go is not me? We don't, right? Comparing, or mana, is also the things that we buy for ourselves, right? You buy specific types of clothing because you're like, oh, this clothing is me. This is so me, right? How many times has someone said to you, oh, that shirt is so you. Oh, those shoes are so you, right? Who's you? Who am I? Why do these clothes are so me, right? It's an illusion. So this is conceit also. So when we're picking and choosing things that we believe identify or make the identification of who we think we are. This fetter is difficult to break because it's so rooted in our mindset. It's part of who we believe we are. It's difficult to surpass. Often there's many stories in the sutras and discourses where a lot of monks could not beat this fetter. They were so close to the end. They were so close to the end, they couldn't beat this fetter. Because how do you let go of the notion of me, or I am, or I exist? Right? There's also stories of monks who became nihilistic because of this and made the proclamation that, well, if I don't exist and there's no me, then I might as well just kill myself. And so there are many stories where monks and nuns have killed themselves in an attempt to release that me. And so then the Buddha made some rules, some precepts about that later on. But that's the idea. That's how powerful this fetter is. So how do you let go of that? Our entire life is revolved around our identity, who we think we are, who we think we should be, how others see us, how others think of us, how others view us, how we want to become. Okay, that's it. If I talk anymore, I'm going to go way deeper. This is a heavy topic. This is also when we label, for instance, during meditation, that labeling also helps with our conceit view. So what we do when we label during meditation is we let go of what we believe is happening, or let go of the scenario that we believe is happening or going on, and just using that one word label to identify the situation, right? So if we're sitting in meditation, someone opens the door, if you're unskilled, then you're going to allow your mind to entertain that sound of the door opening. So your mind's going to go, oh, who's here? Who's opening the door? Why are they late? Why are they disturbing my meditation? Who do they think they are? Don't they know we're meditating? Right? So your mind just keeps on playing these scenarios and excuses and expectations in your mind. And so we use label to let go of that. Because all those excuses, all that storytelling that's happening is part of conceit. You're comparing yourself of being meditative against, right? And so when we use labeling, we let go of that storytelling and just say door, or sound, or person, right? We're not identifying with the experience. We're just observing the experience as it's happening when it's happening. And so we can do that pretty much in everything else that we do, right? If you're going shopping, and shopping is probably one of the most obvious situations or circumstances where we can truly see our conceitedness there, in the sense that you're picking and choosing or comparing foods or clothes to what you like and don't like, right? So you're going food shopping, right? You're going to pick one brand against the other because you don't like this brand and you like this brand more, right? Or you pick a black shirt versus a red shirt because it looks better on you, right? So we're constantly comparing. We're constantly feeding our ego And so and this is not to say that you shouldn't eat food that you like or don't like, but at least being able to be aware of it going on is the point, right? Because you can't force yourself to eat something you don't like. If something disgusts you, you don't want to eat it, right? That's fine. It's okay to choose the foods that you like or don't like, but as you're making the choice, be aware that there is a choice being made. Be aware that you are measuring or you're comparing one thing to the other, right? And so you want to train your mind to do that, because you can't just expect to know mindfulness. You have to be mindful. You can't just say, oh, I know how to be mindful. I know how to watch my breath. I know that when I'm walking, or when I'm chanting. But then as soon as you leave the temple and you exit the parking lot, you forget all about your meditation. You forget all about your mindfulness, right? So if we are working out our mindfulness practices all the time, then it becomes habit, it becomes routine, it becomes automatic. It's obviously not easy, but if you maintain the practice, even if it's just by being mindful of walking to your car and driving home, be mindful of your steps, be mindful of how you're walking, be mindful of how the ground feels or how the breeze feels. Be aware of your surroundings, and when you're driving, be mindful of your driving. If you're being a mindful driver, then you're practicing defensive driving. If you're unmindful in driving, then an accident can happen. You can run a light or run a stop sign or hit something or someone, right? And so if you're practicing mindfulness as often as you can in any circumstance, in any situation, right? Because meditation is not just on the cushion. Meditation is in everything that you do. Washing the dishes can be mindfulness and meditation. Folding laundry can be meditation. Cleaning can be meditation. Anything, any mundane activity can be meditation. Because what is meditation? Meditation is just sitting here, folded hands and laps and sitting down. It's not meditation. That's just one aspect of how meditation works. But meditation is what? I'm sorry? Awareness. Concentration. It is concentrating on one object at a time. One pointless concentration. Samadhi. One pointless concentration. So anything that you do with one pointedness or with full awareness can be considered meditation. If you go to work and you're doing a task, that's meditation, because you're only working on one thing at a time. If you're multitasking, that's not so much meditation. But if you're doing one thing at a time, then it's meditation. So we need to let go of this idea, this view that meditation is only on the cushion or when we're doing walking meditation, because that is incorrect. If you hold on to that view, then you'll be disappointed that when you sit down for meditation, your mind is cluttered, you can't stop daydreaming or distractions from arising, and then you start to become self-discouraged. You start to discourage yourself. You're like, this isn't working. Maybe meditation isn't for me. I hear that all the time. And I'll ask people, like, what's happening? What's going on? What are you thinking? What are you doing to feel that way? It's oftentimes, I just can't stop my mind from being distracted. Thoughts arise and blah, 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 blah. And I can't still my mind. I can't clear my mind. First of all, who told you to clear your mind? That's not what meditation is. Sure, yes, at the long run, right? Eventually, you want your mind to be clear. But in the meantime, that's not the point of meditation. Because how often can we do that? How often can we actually sit and clear our mind for a long duration? Maybe a few seconds, right? And a distraction arises, or a feeling arises, or emotion arises, and then you go back to the object of meditation, and then you get distracted again. So you're constantly coming and going, right? Your meditation is a wave of distraction and peace. And so it's never going to be still. You're never going to have a stilled, watered mind during meditation. Not yet. But that's also not the point. Until you get to that point, the point of meditation is to be aware of what's going on in your mind. That is the biggest aspect of meditation right now is to know how your mind works. You want to be best friends with your mind. Because that's the only way we're going to figure out how it works. How it works as in, why do specific thoughts arise during specific situations? Why do these emotions or feelings arise when I'm seeing this person, or I'm talking to this person, or I go to this place? Why this? Why that? You're constantly contemplating. You're investigating your own self. You're investigating your own mind to figure out why things work the way they work. Why you feel the way you feel. Why you... anything else, right? You're attempting to pull back the veil of life and to discover the reality of things, to see things as they are, right? And that gets down to ignorance, the very last aspect. Finally, seeing things as they are is the big aha moment. It is the clearance of ignorance. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking now. What are your questions, concerns, emotional outbursts? Yes, Joseph?
It seems like a very hard one because the mind wants to, by sensing its alone, it wants to navigate, it wants to map, and it constantly try to clear the clutter. But then there's also the emotions and the senses that come along with it, how strong those senses are. So in a way, it's about kind of maintaining a certain balance within the senses and getting dominant control of the senses to be able to not have the mind to have so many mental formations and wanting to map and go out of control. At the same time, emotion arises with the senses, and those emotions have to also be subdued and maintained to a level. So if you can't, from how I see it, if you can't get that one down, the rest fall apart. They really do fall apart. So I can see how it's such the most hardest one to get, and I see how suicide was some people's to go to, because in a way, to stop that mode of sentient mind wanting to map and navigate is nerve-wracking. It can guide you to a point of insanity, if you really are that dedicated to it. But I think it really boils down to essential desire and the emotions and total the five senses.
The five senses would be eradicated at the first fetter, self-view, right? And sensual desire is still even if you have no sense of self, but you still want good things, right? If you're rich and you have everything you want, you still want more nice things, right? And so it's that aspect that is the most difficult to let go of, is the attempt to eliminate our core belief of believing that things or places or whatever will allow us to be happy or satisfied, right? Because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, I don't care about what I wear or how I look or blah, blah, blah. It's one thing, right? That's letting go the self-view, right? But at the conceit level, it's still the ego, right? Because you can mask your outside appearance by looking sloppy and not caring how you look like or whatever, but you can't mask the ego that's still there. You can't mask how your mind sees itself or talks to itself, right? And so it's that piece that it's hard to let go.
Through the sensual desires and your mental formations of what's wrong, right, best, good, happy, sad.
Right.
It's like an emotion is kind of like, I wouldn't say turning them off, right? You don't want to turn them off, right? You kind of want to subdue them so you recognize that they don't let them rule you or control them per se, right?
Right. You're not being emotionless. right? You're not being nihilistic. It is just like I said, it's not allowing them to take over. Because if you see a situation, for instance, whether it's a good situation or a bad situation, typically, from a general's point of view, we either feel bad for the person, like if we see someone getting mugged or something, for instance, right? You either are nonchalant about it, like, let it be, or you feel bad and want to do help or find help or do something, right? At the elimination of conceit, you eliminate those thought patterns of, should I help, should I not help? Do I go for help? Do I not care? Do I do care? And you just do something according to what is appropriate. So there's no so the thinking pattern that we typically have when we make decisions is gone. Any other questions? Don't have social media. Mm-hmm. I mean, when it comes to social media, I hate it. I'm not on social media often. I'm only on it for temple use for the most part. But I'm trying to figure out how to say this nicely. If someone, for instance, is commenting terrible things about you, for instance, right? Most people are going to get saddened, right? Like, oh, how dare you? Or like, why are they saying this, right? Your self is hurting. It's hurting your ego, essentially, right? Because you have an idea of who you believe you are, and their comments going against that is what's hurting, right? Because you're like, no, I'm not that person, or I don't do that, or I don't say that. They're claiming I do. So it's just a defense mechanism. So eradicating conceit is eradicating that defense mechanism that our ego is always at play. This is where we're comparing, right? If someone's talking bad about you, that's still comparing. It's comparing your badness with someone else's goodness, or vice versa. So you can either don't use social media, or just don't care. Don't allow others to control how you think, feel, or believe yourself to be. So at the end of the day, I, or the me, doesn't exist anyway. If someone said something bad about you, and assuming they never said it, how's your mind state? Back to normal, right? Because they never said it in the first place. And then they said something, and the mind state changes. So if you think of, if someone does say something, imagine it never being said. And then you would have never been affected by it. Or you can go back to what I always say before. Is it true? Is what they're saying to me true? Yes or no? No, it's not true. Okay, it's not true. Then who cares? Why are you upset? But if they say, yes, it is true. Okay, it's true. Everyone knows about it. It's obvious. Why are you upset? Right?
They're coming at you from a point of view of ego.
Right.
And their ego and your ego are having a battle.
Right.
But those aren't real at all.
It's a clash of egos.
Self-implemented is, there's no one there to get upset.
Right.
But we do because we're so conditioned. Because when we're born without fetters, right? We condition to life.
Mm-hmm.
The causes and conditions of our world. We encounter the fetters, or we are the fetters, and it's so dug in because we're conditioned every day of our lives, all our whole life. We're conditioned by these things, right? So that's why it's so hard to just turn them off.
Yes. Because all these seeds are being planted throughout our life. Right? All the fetter seeds are being planted in our lives. Everything that's negative, positive, or neutral, all these seeds are being planted. And they only sprout when you water them, right? So if you continue to allow yourself or others to compare or to judge or to measure, then you're watering those seeds. But if you don't allow them to compare or judge or measure, and just let it be as it is, then you're not watering them. They will never come to fruition. So this is, I go back to the mindfulness practice, just being mindful and being aware of what is happening in your mind. That is the most important thing. Don't care what other people say or what other people do, because that doesn't affect you. Someone calling you a big fat purple cow does not make you an actual big fat purple cow. Right? And so if you don't allow what they're saying to affect you, like you should, then what they say is empty. Our happiness or unhappiness is completely in your own hands. 100%. Your enlightenment or your suffering is in your hands 100%. The only reason that you're unhappy is because you allowed something to affect you to make you unhappy. But the happiness is not in objects, it's not external. You can have all the possessions in the world, you can have all the money in the world, you can have everything you've ever wanted. But at the end of the day, when you go to sleep, none of that is in your mind. None of that is there. So where's the happiness? Happiness is not in the objects. Happiness is in the simplicity and the acceptance of how things are. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know the form of this, so I don't know if it's a question only directed at you or if we comment on each other's stuff. But I just wanted to say, for social media, I think it's important to remember with social media, anything that you're allowing into your mind, it's your choice. So whether you read what someone else says, comparing, or you don't, like in my particular case, if I get 3 selfies from someone, I unfollow. But what you consume, whether it's food or the stuff you wear or the media, it's your choice.
Exactly. You have the choice to be happy or unhappy. You have the choice to allow it to affect you or not affect you. Just because it's there, it doesn't mean you have to use it. Right?
Social media obviously uses an algorithm, which work via how much you engage. So this is often, if you're seeing too much of the same content, too much of the same stuff, and too much of the stuff that amuses you and makes you upset, sad, or all these other things, it is because the algorithm is seeing what you engage with the most. And when you engage with that most, it can really put a hammer on your head.
True that. Any other questions? Alrighty, so we'll finish up. I also want to remind everyone that next Saturday is our 8 Precepts retreat, so I hope I'll see most of you here for that. Our 8 Precepts retreat is a full day, so it's from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So it'll be a nice filled day of teachings and companionship. So I hope everyone will be here for that. If you have any questions about that, feel free to ask myself or any of the members up here about it. Okay, that's it. So we will transfer the mirror and then we'll go to chanting. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we have accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. Namo Shakyamuni.
Inviting the bell.
Be speech and mind in perfect oneness. I send my heart along with the sound of the. May the hearers awaken from forgetfulness and transcend all anxiety and sorrow. Listen, listen, this wonderful sound brings me back to my true home.
Incense offering. In
gratitude we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space and may it be fragrant as earth herself, reflecting our careful effort. Our wholehearted mindfulness and the fruit of understanding slowly ripening. May we and all beings become Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May we awaken and realize our true home.
Opening verse. The incense
in the censer now is burning. All the Dharma realm in every auspicious clouds appearing. Our sincere intention thus fulfilled, as all Buddhas now show their perfect body. Homage to the incense cloud canopy, Bodhisattva and great Bodhisattva.
Verses for bowing. We bow together. Homage
to the eternally abiding Buddhas, the supreme Dharma and sagely Sangha, throughout the Dharma realm and the realm of empties, and 3 periods of time. the fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha Maitreya, honored future Buddha Manjushri, great wisdom Bodhisattva, universal great conduct Bodhisattva, all Dharma guarding Deva Bodhisattvas, and the glorious mountain assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. To Amitabha Buddha in the land of ultimate bliss, Avalokiteshvara, great compassion Bodhisattva, great strength Bodhisattva, earth store great vow Bodhisattva, and the glory of great pure sea light Bodhisattva.
Please sit down. The great compassion mantra. Namo,
great compassionate Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo, great compassion Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo, great compassion Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
Namo
Ratnatrayaya, Namo Aryavalokitesvaraya, Bodhisattvaya, Mahasattvaya, Mahakarunikaya, Om Sarvaravaye, Sodanadasya, Namoskritvahi Mamarya, Palokiteshvararam Dava, Namo Narakindi, Hrimahavatswami, Yam Sarvasadva, Namo Bhagamavitato Taryata Om Avalokiloka Hiri Mahabodhisattva Sarva Sarva Mala Mala Mahi Mahiridayam Koro Koro Karmam Doro Doro Vishati Mahavishati Dara Dara Dirini Shvaraya Chala Chala Mama Vimala Muktilehi Shina Prashina Hasham Prashari Visha Vishramam Prashaya Holo Holo Mara Holo Holo Hri Sara Sara Siri Siri Soro Soro Bodhiya Bodhiya Bodhaya Bodhaya Maitreya Narakindi Ishanina Mayamana Swaha Siddhaya Swaha Mahasiddhaya Swaha Siddhayogeshwaraya Swaha Narakin Swaha Maranara Swaha Sirasimha Mokaya Swaha Sarva Maha Swaha Chakra Siddhaya Swaha Padma Kasaya Swaha Narakindi Vagalaya Swaha Mavari Sankaraya Swaha Namo Ratna Trayaya Namo Arya Valokiteshvaraya Swaha Om Siddhyanto Mantra Padaya Swaha.
The Dhamma Bodhi
Body is bringing morning light in concentration. My heart is at peace. A half smile is born on my. This is a new day, and I vow to go through it in mindfulness. The sun of wisdom has risen, shining in every direction. Noble Sangha, diligently bring your mind into meditation. Namo Shakyamonaye Bodhaya. Namo Shakyamonaye Bodhaya. Namo Shakyamonaye Bodhaya.
verses for opening a sutra. The unsurpassed,
Surpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of eons. I now see and hear, receive and uphold it, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.
touching the earth, the one who's bound,
Bows and the one who is bowed to are both by nature empty. Therefore the communication between them is inexpressibly perfect. Our practice center is the net of Indra, reflecting all Buddhas as my own person reflects in all Buddhas, to whom with my whole life I go for refuge.
offering light,
Light in the 10 directions, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, to whom we bow in gratitude.
teaching
And living the way of awareness in the very midst of suffering and confusion. Shakyamuni Buddha, the awakened one, to whom we bow in gratitude.
cutting
Through
through
ignorance, awakening our hearts and our minds, Manjushri the Bodhisattva of great understanding, to whom we bow in gratitude.
Working
Mindfully, working joyfully for the sake of all beings, Samantabhadra the Bodhisattva of great action, to whom we bow in gratitude.
Responding
To suffering, serving beings in countless ways, Avalokiteshvara the Bodhisattva of great compassion, to whom we bow in gratitude.
seat of
Awakening and loving kindness in children, all beings, Maitreya the Buddha to be born, to whom we bow in gratitude.
Showing
The way fearlessly and compassionately, the stream of all our ancestral teachers, to whom we bow in gratitude.
the Dhamma.
Lovely, we now have a chance to see it and practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning.
Of the Paramita, the
Bodhisattva Avalokita, while moving in the discourse of Prajna Paramita, shed light on the 5 skandhas and found them equally empty. After this penetration, he overcame ill-beliefs, and Shariputra form is emptiness, emptiness is form, form is not other than empty, emptiness is not other than form. The same is true with feelings, perceptions, mental formation, consciousness. Listen, Shariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, neither defiled nor immaculate, neither increasing nor decreased. Therefore in emptiness there is neither form nor feelings, nor perceptions, nor nor consciousness, no eye or ear or nose or tongue or body or mind, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realms of element, no interdependent origin, and no extinction of them, no ill-being, no cause of ill-being, no end of ill-being, and no path, no understanding, no attainment, because there is no the Bodhisattva's ground in Prajna Paramita find no obstacles for their minds, having no obstacle. They overcome fear, liberating themselves forever from illusion and realizing perfect nirvana. All Buddhas in the past, present, and future arrive at Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Therefore one should perfect understanding is the highest mantra, the unequaled mantra, the destroyer of ill-being, the incorruptible truth. Prajna Paramita should therefore be proclaimed. Gate Gate Para Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Swaha Gate Gate Para Gate Para samgate bodhi swaha gate gate paragat para samgate bodhi swaha.
Invoking the Bodhisattva's name, we
invoke your name, Avalokiteshvara. We aspire to learn your way of listening. The suffering in the world, you know how to listen. In order to understand, we invoke your name in order to practice listening with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will sit and listen without any prejudice. We will sit and listen without judging or reacting. We will sit and listen in order to understand. We will sit and listen so attentively that we will be able to hear what the other person is saying, and also what is being left unsaid. We know that just by listening deeply, we already alleviate a great deal of pain and suffering in the other person.
We invoke
your name, Manjushri. We aspire to learn your way, which is to be still and to look deeply into the heart of things and into the hearts of people. We will look with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will look with Buddhist eyes. We will look without judging or reacting. We will deeply so that we will be able to and understand the roots of suffering through the impermanent and selfless nature of all that is. We will practice your using the sword of understanding to cut bonds of suffering, thus freeing ourselves and other species.
We invoke
your name, Samantabhadra. We aspire to learn just your way, the eyes and heart of compassion, to bring joy to one person in the morning and to ease the pain of one person in the afternoon. We know that the happiness of others is our own happiness, and we aspire to path of service. We know that every word, every look, every action, and every smile can bring happiness to others. We know that if we practice wholeheartedly, we ourselves may be an inexhaustible source of peace and joy for our loved ones and for all species.
We invoke
your name, Shiti Garbha. We aspire to present where there is darkness, suffering, oppression, and despair, so we bring light, hope, relief, and liberation to those people. We are determined not to forget about or abandon those in desperate situations. We will do our best to establish contact with those who cannot find a way out of their suffering, those whose cries for help, justice, equality, and human rights are not being heard. We know that found in many places on earth. We will our best not to contribute to creating more hells on earth and to help transform the hells that already exist. We will lies the qualities of perseverance and stability, so that like the earth we can always be supportive and faithful to those in need.
The three refuges. I
Take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows the way in this life. I take refuge in the way of understanding and of love. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony and awareness.
Dwelling
In the refuge of Buddha, I clearly see the path of light and beauty in the world. Dwelling in the refuge of Dharma, I learn to open many doors on the path of transformation. Dwelling in the refuge of Sangha, shining light that supports me, keeping my practice free of obstruction.
taking
refuge in the Buddha. In myself I aspire to all people recognize their own awakened nature, realizing the mind of love, taking refuge in the Dharma. In myself I aspire to help all people fully master the ways of practice and walk together on the path of liberation, taking refuge in the Sangha. In myself I aspire to help all people build fourfold communities to embrace all beings and support their transformation.
Sharing the merit,
Reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness gives rise to benefits without limits. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path.